to another edition of Gas. I am Gresh. He is Jason Anik.
You were playing everybody and we're winning the game last night.
The head coach is fighting people on the sideline.
What do you got for me?
I know you're a part of Tight Pants Society.
No fucking play is that a gimme, right?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me be the first to tell you that this is your first disjointed edition of Gas today because we've moved up a day. We're starting at 9 o'clock. I got a trip to take. Jason Anik's got kids and people and things to deal with. I'm sure it's going to be a hell of a weekend in Montreal with the champ Belal Muhammad. But Jay, good to see you on a Monday morning. Those kids get off to school okay?
Oh, we went off just fine. Good to see you, Gresh. I love 9 a.m. Monday morning, like a business day, starting it with Andy Gresh, but my brother will kill me for wearing this headband. My wife will kill me. She's in L.A. You're going to Vegas. I'm like the only adult right now in South Florida. My mom's in Beantown. But yeah, wheels up for me to Montreal to see Belal, remember the name, Muhammad, defend his title on Saturday. It's finally here. I'm all fired up, man. I know we're going to maybe talk a little bit about that card, but, you know, Belal was on with my brother John on the Anik and Florian podcast last night, and I'm like watching it. And for me, I can't even sit and watch and think about the fight, right? If I'm being honest with you, this is our show here. It's my friend. All I'm thinking about is my friend fighting in 6 days and all the emotions that come with that.
Yeah, I think I've already locked in my bets on Belal. So I really feel like this is going to be a kind of a showcase for Belal Muhammad. And with what went on this past weekend at Fight Night in Kansas City, which was a really good card, but you know, you can start to see the division kind of coming around him a little bit. But I just have so much faith in Belal Muhammad. And really a lot of it, Jay, is what you have taught me about Belal. I don't know the guy from anybody, but I kind of feel like I do. MMA is his whole world, his whole life. I'm sure he's been sitting there studying the tape and knows Maddalena inside and out and understands who he's going up against. I can't wait for this pay-per-view. I know it's close to where I am. I wish I were going. Unfortunately, circumstances keep me from doing so. But I don't know. I have supreme confidence in Belal Muhammad. And I know we were going to get into this later, but I'm really torn in the co-main event because to see Valentina Shevchenko as an underdog is so rare over the course of her career and her life. And, you know, this you could say might be a bit of a crossroads moment for her in her career.
Yeah, well, and frankly, for her, sort of losing the belt and retaining it back, I think sort of solidified her. For Montreal to get the opportunity here against Valentina Shevchenko, I mean, what a great opportunity. When you do end up getting your opportunity to fight for a belt, and this is the woman standing across the octagon, I think is phenomenal. I do think it's pretty close on paper, and Cody will put up the lines at some point, but I think Valentina very well may close as a favorite, you know? And Belal Muhammad, has what, a 2-1 favorite or whatever it may be. You sort of was the opposite. He's been an underdog. Valentina plus 130 this morning, Cody says. That surprises me. I have a lot of respect for Montreal, but you know, you recall even when Alexander Volkanovski fought Ilia Topuria, I can't tell you how many people said, "Oh, Volk at minus 115. How do you not play Volk at minus 115?" So I do always say, and it's a cliche, but Vegas knows what they're talking about. There's a reason why Montreal is designated as the favorite. And shit, we already started with the UFC, so let's get right into it. We're talking about gambling. I'm going to talk to you about some happiness hedging, right? Because I need some advice.
I love this.
And I have a little cold from last week, so forgive me if I sound a little nasal, right? So I texted Gresh this weekend, right? And Cody was part of the text, but Cody knows about all of this from years of sort of knowing what my brother John and I do. So whether you call it emotional hedge, happiness hedge, whatever else it may be, John, my brother John and I, all our lives have been betting against Boston teams so that as a way to sort of take down the team they're playing against. So for example, Boston Celtics, New York Knicks coming up in this series. My brother and I have a lot of action on the New York Knicks, not necessarily because we like the Knicks in the series, but as a way to take down the Knicks. And if the Celtics throw up all over themselves, we'll get paid. So I just want to read you, and I will transition this back to the UFC.
I love this. This is gold.
So I texted Gresh my Knicks action, right? A bunch of different bets that I have, right? On the Knicks, right? So, and this is what I said to him, right? So I said, all right, here we go. Gresh, this is what we do. Trying to take down the Knicks. Willing to pay for the C's to advance. I know you kind of love it. right? And then I write, if C's win game 1, we reinvest with the Knicks with better odds. And Gresh is like fucking wild, And I'm like, sorry for blowing up your phone. He's like, I'm fascinated. But this is the one text that I want to just read you for you folks. So we've been doing this for 25 years. And this is a quote. I said, you can thank me and John for some of those chips. I'll die believing we've had an impact. And you can laugh all you want, right? So when the Falcons were up 28-3 in the Super Bowl against the Patriots, John placed a $500 bet on the Falcons. Who knows? Minus 10,000, whatever. 500 to pay $7. Meaning, okay, if the Patriots are going to come back and I lose $500, so be it. So this is my long-winded way of, and we'll get back to the Knicks Celtics and all the action there. But gosh, man, in order to solidify this win for Belal Muhammad, I'm really considering going and doing a happiness hedge and placing a little bet on Jack. Do that against Leon Edwards. I probably won't do that just out of principle because Belal don't want me doing any of that. So anyway, I've been rambling. Your thoughts on all of that?
No, I think where I would draw the line is the Belal piece of it because it's like you're flying too close to the sun on that one. At least it feels like it, right? Like that's the one where you're like, okay, I don't know if I really need to do that because a lot of what you're talking about though is the superstition of being a big time Boston sports fan. Like at the end of the day, that's really what the concept you rolled out is just rooted in, that you want your home team to win so bad. You think you're putting the Maluki on the other side by betting on them. It's so not nuts.
You're right. And what's interesting, right, is, my mom is superstitious with the Celtics beanbag or whatever it is. And it's really not like a financial thing, right? Like, no, I don't really bet on MMA. So I sort of was trying to tie it in there. And you're right, though. And Cody was commenting like bad karma, right? Like, I ain't going to mess with that. But it really is interesting when you think about sort of, opportunities to win money, right? Like for me, I'm really confident in the Boston Celtics. But I am happy to pay money to not have the New York Knicks emerge victorious out of that series. And let's actually go there, Gresh, because Knicks, they sort of threw up over themselves a little bit losing game 5, but they go on the road, game 6, win at Detroit, punch their ticket to this series against Boston. Certainly the Celtics handled them during the regular season, won all 4 games. The last game they played was, I believe, a double overtime game. KP went off, but in that game, it was, that game was interesting, right? Knicks dominated. I think they had 14 or 15 rebound advantage. They had 60 points in the paint. I know you're supremely confident in the Boston Celtics, but just sort of your general thoughts about this New York-Boston matchup in round 2.
Yeah, I just don't think New York has enough to be able to deal with everything that the Celtics are going to throw at them. And, I know that Holiday has been dinged up. You would like to have him back in a series like this, considering you have a couple of dogs at guard in New York in terms of Hart and Brunson. But at the end of the day, Jay, I think you kind of nailed it. In the inside, in the paint, like this will be a series, I think, that will require Jason Tatum to play a little differently. He's going to need to be a stronger presence on the glass. They're going to need him underneath a little bit more, even though KP and Al can kind of handle it. And I'm not saying that Tatum's got to turn into back to the basket, drop step layup like Karl Malone. I'm not going crazy like that, but it's going to require him to be a part of the rebounding group to make sure that they win and win big. So I don't know if this series for Tatum, Jay, is as much about go out and score 30 points a game as it is be a complete player, help us underneath. The one thing the Celtics have, in theory, is plenty of scoring. So if it gets high scoring, Knicks aren't going to keep up. You want to play defense, Knicks don't have enough talent. I just think this is, at worst, a 6-game series. And for me, Jay, the bigger issue that I have with the C's is themselves staying healthy and being right than it is anything that the Knicks can throw to them in this series. And I hope I don't sound like a honk. I feel like I'm going to be right by saying Celtics in 5.
Well, Drew Holiday appears to be healthy. The whole squad appears to be healthy. Certainly they've had some time off here to get ready for the Knicks. I am confident, right, in this line, right? Celtics minus 800 in the series. Knicks coming back at plus 500. It is interesting. I think there's some value on the Knicks plus 2.5 games at plus 105 potentially. You talk about worst case 6, but I will say, right, there is going to be the Knicks to a certain extent playing here with house money, being this big of an underdog in this spot. And so I think maybe a little bit of that can be an advantage. You know, you see Cleveland lose game 1 against Indiana, and Darius Garland didn't play. And you talk about injuries, right? He's missed the last 3 games, I think sprained toe or whatever it is, but certainly he's an important piece. I have a ticket sitting in this drawer for the Indiana Pacers, 42-1 to win the Eastern Conference, right? Which is an absurd value. I'm not sure it's coming through, but I think health really will be a big part. Hard for me to imagine the Celtics not getting through this series if they are healthy. But,
well, Jay, just quickly from the gambling standpoint, even though we are Boston, that's an unbelievable play. 42-1 on a team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year and could get there this year. That's a great number.
Well, and I, you know what? I'm going to pull out the ticket and find the date. But, you know, when you think about Halliburton last year getting injured in that series, right? I mean, Indiana was playing pretty well. And, you know, a lot of these teams, the playoff experience obtained, you know, right? They looked ready to go, right? Aaron Neesmith, old friend, getting some nice minutes there. All right, let's see.
You know what? You mentioned the quickly. Let me jump in on the. You mentioned the experience. Well, look at Houston, number 2 seed. Missed the playoffs last year, right? So Houston, 41-41, missed the play-in, number 2 seed because they surged, no playoff experience. Look at what Golden State did last night, 103-89 in their house. That's a wake-up call for Houston, but Houston and Detroit took their first big steps to being a part of this process for the next couple of years.
Well put, no question about it. So the date on this 42-1 ticket, March 6th of 2025.
Wow.
So, and I will say, and the price is off. 42-1 is a big number. And but are you telling me that if Indiana finds a way to get through Cleveland, they couldn't give Boston all they can handle? Most certainly. And well, it would really surprise me if the Knicks emerge from this Final Four. Any of the other 3 teams, whether it's Cleveland, Indiana, or Boston, not really surprise me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that Indiana is kind of a sleeper team because their best player is Tyrese Halliburton. And what I know about Tyrese Halliburton, yeah, he's a good basketball player, but he's a big fan of WWE. That's about what I know about the guy. And I say that not to like disparage him, but if you're going to be a superstar, people got to get to know you a little bit. I think unless you're Caitlin Clark, it's hard maybe to do it out of the state of Indiana, even though it is the basketball, some would argue a basketball capital of the world. But I just look at the Knicks, Jay, and they don't have that other mofo. And I don't even know if they have a mofo in Jalen Brunson. Like, I think he is the guy of the moment. But for me, I look at Donovan Mitchell differently than I look at Jalen Brunson. I think Donovan Mitchell is a dude. I think Jalen Brunson is a really good player who can score some points and play gutty. And there is a difference between the two in my mind. But I was talking about this on national radio over the weekend. When you think about the Lakers, right? You look at where the Lakers are. They're hoping LeBron comes back at 41. They're hoping their point guard gets on the LeBron plan to actually start to look good, feel good, play good, all that kind of stuff, maybe playing on both ends of the floor. We are so blessed with the team that we root for that we don't have any of those issues. Our superstars aren't petulant. They bust their ass. Look at Luka when he came into the league to now. Look at Tatum to now. It's not even close. Those guys, we're so fortunate that we have dudes in the NBA that we root for who have their head on straight, who have been proven winners, and who put in the work. They're not perfect, but man, it's hard not to really love this Celtics team right now, going all the way back to the NBA Finals once again. And then as you and I talked about, Jay, then it comes down to who's on the other side, who won that other side of the tournament. I don't have to worry about all 8 of them. I got to worry about one of them.
Yep. Well, a lot for me to chew on there. So let me just get back to the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Lakers, fuck the Lakers. Lakers are eliminated. They win one playoff game with Luka and LeBron. Congratulations. Good luck moving forward. But while we would have maybe hoped to get Lakers Warriors, we get Wolves Warriors, the 6 and 7 seed, which is interesting. But in terms of the Cavaliers and the Indiana Pacers, right? And you talk about Halliburton, and you've talked about, okay, if the Celtics-Knicks series, who's the 3rd best player behind Brown and Tatum in the series? Is it Porzingis? Is it Jalen Brunson? But I will say, if Halliburton, let's say Celtics are playing Indiana at some point, right? Yep. Halliburton might be the second best player in that series with respect to Jaylen Brown. Halliburton makes his teammates better. He talks about being like the team mom in a way, and I'm not the biggest fan of this guy necessarily, but I think he is super dangerous in the postseason. And whether Garland comes back or not, I think there's some value on Indiana plus 170 in the series right now. Cleveland coming back at minus 210. But either way, if you like the Celtics against the Knicks, certainly having the road team win the first game in this series is a good thing. Celtics-Knicks gets going tonight. Celtics are 9-point favorites. Look, I'm just hoping for them to figure out, Celtics much better on the road this year than at home. I'm not too worried if, I'm going to be surprised if the Celtics are up 2-0 getting to New York. I think even if they win this series, I think the best chance for the Celtics to throw up all over themselves is in one of these two first games.
Well, here's the thing is that the Knicks have to rise up and play well tonight. I don't think they get game 2. If they're going to get one, they got to get game 1. And I think that's a good point that you make, Jay, in terms of if the Knicks are going to have any chance, they got to try to steal one of these. Now, here's the thing. The Celtics have been off for about a week. So sometimes we get that kind of first quarter lag. Like I really wonder, and I'm going to have to dig in a little bit. I do wonder if a first half Knicks play could be in play tonight, because we do see teams that come off rest have the slow start. So maybe it's close first half, second half, Missoula gets them in there, tells them how they're all idiots. They respond and play well, and they end up winning by 15 when it's all said and done.
Well, no rust will be on the defensive side of the ball for Boston, and that's right. What I look forward to the most is Jalen Brunson, to your points, right? Let's see all the dogs they throw at Jalen Brunson and see how effective he is with all these dudes, Holiday, White, different guys guarding him and giving him different looks. Hopefully they can neutralize him. You and I are not fans of Cat, is that what they call him, Karl Anthony Towns. You and I are not big fans of him, but I had some negative things to say about him at the beginning of the season, and he had some nice games. But yeah, man, he's a regular season player. Like good luck. Someone just throw him an elbow and see how he likes it. I love Boston in the series, but you can be sure I'm all over New York.
Oh, yeah. Cat really is a cat, and Al Horford will prove that. I mean, that's the thing. Al doesn't have to give me a ton of points or a ton of rebounds in this series. Be a pain in the ass to Karl Anthony Towns, and that's the biggest thing that Al can do in this series.
I agree. And I will say it's got to be nice to some extent for the Boston Celtics that you're not playing against the hockey team that was the Orlando Magic out there. I think it's going to be interesting. And I think the Celtics with their physicality could really make this Knicks team feel as though they don't belong in the series. But their head coach is going to do everything he can to prevent that in Tom Thibodeau. You've talked a lot about him being hard despite his soft roster.
Yeah. He's a wackadoo. He's kind of wired a little differently. I admit I was on both underdogs last night. I thought there was some pretty good value and had one, and both of them ended up winning outright, quite honestly. But I think Golden State closed to like 2.5. I think Indy closed at 8.5 or something like that. So I wonder if the underdog trend will continue into tonight, because I mean, you do have the Knicks almost getting 10. So you're on the line of tantalizing and making it juicy by offering almost double digits. We'll see how that line moves during the day. It'll be heavy on Boston, no question. Yeah. It'll lean real heavy towards the Celtics, because I don't think there's a ton of consumer confidence in the New York Knicks.
I agree. And I want to get back to the Western Conference, but just to let you know, let's say the Celtics win tonight and then the Knicks are like 10-1 in the series. Yes, I will be betting on that if you're curious.
Now, what is the unit to what is the you know what I mean? Like, you're not putting a full unit on it, I know that, but are we talking like 5, 10, 20 type deal?
It's a good question. It depends. My brother is multiple units on the New York Knicks, because this is our nightmare, right? Like this is our nightmare. The Knicks beating the Celtics and the New York Knicks being the reason that the Celtics don't defend their championship and win back-to-back. So honestly, oftentimes it depends on what the balance is in my account, right? Some of that Rory McIlroy money, I'm happy to give right back to the sports book in order to punch the Celtics ticket through. And this will continue all the way through and find the spots for value. All right. So
go ahead. And the reason John does that is because he has and owns multiple units. So it's a little different than you and I.
But I will say we always did this back in the day, even when maybe John was a little bit less flush. And I'll tell you, it's there were certainly spots where we lost money, but there were also plenty of spots where Boston teams have gone very far and not won the whole thing. You know what I'm saying?
Do you like, will there be like t-shirt and hat buying after this? Like, do you have a way to commemorate all of the championships that you and your brother have been responsible for through your backdoor gambling?
It's hilarious. Yes. I mean, do we buy the championship gear? You can be sure. Yeah. But before we transition to the Western Conference, I don't know if you've seen any of the Celtics documentary, Celtics City, right? Have you seen any of it?
I have, yeah.
Okay, so I guess you don't like it as much as I do. I'm only one episode in, but it is just, wow, we're lucky to be Celtics fans. Thinking about what you just said, right? I mean,
no question.
It's so special to watch. And one of the things Bill Russell, we could go on a long diatribe here, but Bill Russell talking about not playing for Boston, playing for the Celtics, and really learning about the history. And, as you get older, 46 years old, or you're 50, whatever.
Yep.
As we get older, gosh, man, this was not that long ago. Everything that was going on in Boston, Massachusetts, just fascinating, right? It's just unbelievable. But go ahead.
I will say this about the Celtic City thing. I will not stooge anything off. I do like it. Don't get me wrong. But I do feel like there's one player in particular who we have listened to most of our lives, maybe a certain radio color analyst who was maybe an MVP of an NBA Finals, who to me didn't get his just due in this, but I want to wait until you've seen more of it, and then maybe we can peel through it a little bit. It is fascinating, and you're right. It reminds you just how special the franchise really is and what it means in the context of the NBA and really as a thread throughout New England. We're so blessed, man. When you think of the studs that we have watched, like Ortiz, Brady, people like that, my God, if you were to do city to city groups of Hall of Famers, we're right up there with anybody in any city across the country in terms of you picked the sport, we had a stud.
Dude, it's unbelievable. And listening to Jaylen Brown talk about it being the city of champions and, whatever Pittsburgh or Green Bay or whatever they want, not the case. So, all right, I want to shift back to the Western Conference real quick. So the Warriors go up 3-1 and almost lose that series, but they don't. They certainly look like the veterans there. And so I just want to talk a little bit about this series. We have the 7 seed versus the 6 seed, T-Wolves versus Warriors. That's hilarious that they are the 6 and 7 seed. Wolves played in the conference championship last year. Anthony Edwards, certainly I don't need to say any more about him. Curious where you're leaning in this series. Minnesota minus 170, Golden State plus 140. There were moments where I felt as though Golden State, gosh, I almost actually thought about the end of Steph Curry or what, he had 0 points for most of that first half last night, but was making everyone better. I think when he passed the ball, his teammates were 5 for 5. So I don't know, man. I still think Golden State kind of live at plus 140. Your thoughts?
Yeah, you can never count out Golden State because they have dogs. I mean, you hate to say it, and I it's being overused. Everybody's like, I got a dog in him. Get the hell out of here. Hey, the Chihuahua, for God's sakes, for some people. But no, when you have Jim Butler, and I think you make a great point.
Jim Butler's
a badass, man. He really is. Like, that's dude hilarious. Where that's somebody that you want. But here's the thing about Steph Curry, and you're right, Jay. He was dog crap shooting the ball last night, but he was still out there affecting the game in other ways. Yep. And that's what the greats do. Tatum does that. He might only have 16 points, but he'll give you 14 rebounds and 8 assists and maybe a couple of blocks in there. The great ones find the way to impact the game in all different kinds of ways. That was Curry last night. I also think, too, that was the perfect opponent for Golden State.
I agree.
A young team who was feeling themselves, didn't have that right kind of experience. And now you got to deal with Ant-Man. And I'll tell you what, and I know I'm going to mention the Lakers again, not much to your chagrin because you hate the Lakers, but imagine if it was Ant-Man left behind with the Lakers when LeBron left versus Luka. Because to me, Ant-Man appears to be one of those rare dudes where he'll get a team around further than they should be based on talent. But if that guy ever gets a real stud beside him, look out. That dude he's next. He is, in terms of, as long as the maturity comes along and he ain't getting teched up or, turning into Sean Kemp Jr. or something like that outside the court, if you know what I mean. This dude has a chance to be the next mega star in the NBA.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, SGA, right? And it's funny, some of the comments about Anthony Edwards talking about sort of not wanting to be that role model, not wanting to be that guy, but it's just a whole package, right? And I think SGA is going to elevate himself in this postseason because they're still, OKC is still a little bit of a hidden market, still sort of in the middle of the country. There's not a lot of televised games in the right window. So I'm looking forward to watching him play more. But when I look at that series, right, I'll probably be rooting for Minnesota ultimately, but I do think, and you're right, as you think about it from the Celtics standpoint, you don't got to worry about that until you sort of get there. Yeah. But I do think depending on that matchup, it could be a big, so, Minnesota could be a very difficult team for the Celtics in that realm, perhaps, I think, matchup.
Yeah, because they have a mofo, and that is Anthony Edwards. Like, he's one of those guys who will him out. Now, the other thing, too, is you can take advantage of that. He will get frustrated. He will make stupid plays. He will get teed up every once in a while. So you can't make it work against you. I'm torn, Jay, because Ant-Man was really amazing. And it makes me think he's going to find a way to get them past Golden State and all those olds. And then I look, and if I hear that old Jim Butler is healthy, he's the kind of guy who wants to press the buttons of a young player like
bingo.
So
bingo. You took it out of my head.
I kind of talked myself into Golden State there. If Jimmy Butler gets like hurt and misses a couple games in this series, then forget about it. They don't have that kind of antagonist. Jimmy Butler has the Rodney Harrison personality, and that's good and bad. But there's a way more bunch of good that comes with the little bit of bad that would be with Jimmy Butler, because sometimes he gets a little too emotional. But him chirping Dylan Brooks in Game 6, I don't know if you saw that.
I love it.
It was great stuff. Yep. I got big respect for old Jim.
I do too, but Rodney Harrison would never disrupt locker rooms in any way. Yeah, maybe. Well, Gresh knows some inside information.
No, I don't. I'm only messing with you on this. No. Rodney was one of those guys that everybody liked, but they recognize that he's a dick. And if you ever meet him,
exactly.
He's a dick. That's all it is. He's just a dick. That's all.
And he does some work with Mike Florio, who I know is not your favorite guy, but Mike Florio is my favorite guy. And Mike Florio and Rodney go at it sometimes. Rodney's the type of, Rodney reminds me a lot of Dominic Cruz. If you say something to Rodney, a little bit, just sort of tongue in cheek or whatever it is, he's going to hold you to every word that comes out of your mouth.
Oh, I like that. What a comparison there. That's a good call.
We haven't talked about the Nuggets and Oklahoma City. I'm a little surprised. Denver plus 475, OKC minus 700. Love that we get this series. I know it's not the major story, but I do love Russell Westbrook going back to OKC. I love me some Russell Westbrook, regardless of where his game is at this stage of his career. Gosh, man, I'm going to be rooting for Denver. Everybody just thinks OKC is the tits. Your thoughts?
I think Denver winning a couple games in this series, wherever you can find the value on that. Like you had mentioned about whoever it was, maybe the Knicks at over a game and a half or 2.5, whatever it was.
Right.
Yeah, I think you can lock in some of those with Denver. I think Denver is going to give Oklahoma City fits. Now, the issue is, do they have somebody to match up against SGA? Like, for example, you mentioned Russell Westbrook, right? He used to play defense. But is there something in Russell Westbrook that can come out in this series that would allow them to maybe slow down SGA a little bit in some way, shape, or form? My guess is no, they don't. And it's really got to be Jokic related. But that's also the scary thing. Who's got the better group of people around them in terms of a superstar? If I look at SGA and I look at Jokic and I start looking at the rest, it's almost like SGA versus Jokic in some ways. So I think Denver is very live in this series. And if you're going to bet them now. Because if they go out and steal game 1, that series number probably goes down into the low 300s, I would think. So this is where you're going to get your best value going into the series, because everybody is just in love with OKC. I think it's more of the betting markets love Oklahoma City, and that's why you see such a big number on Denver that I think is very juicy, very juicy.
I hear you. I will say, the Nuggets going through a hard-fought 7-game series as the less deep team coming in against OKC. The more I think about this, while we expect a great series, I think the other side of the Western Conference bracket may give us a better series. I like OKC pretty heavily in this series, if I'm being honest with you.
Wow,
even though the more I think about it, right? I haven't given it great thought. I don't have any action down now. But it wouldn't surprise me if OKC sort of wins 2 at home, goes to Denver, gets 1, and closes it out game 5 at home.
Interesting.
All right. Let's get off the round ball for a second. Celtics play tonight. Let's go back to the beginning of the board, talk about Bill Belichick-Jordon Hudson a little bit. We didn't talk about that last week, right? Gosh, man, you know what I'll say just starting out the gate, and then I want your thoughts. But Cody Merrow, our producer, knows this very well about me as a 46-year-old man. I've been leaning on young people as I get older my whole life, right? Like, I can't tell you how many conversations Cody and I have had, and I've known Cody 3-4 years now, you know, when he's in his late 20s, and I'm like, I trust you more than me because you're living in this world, right? So I do think there are a lot of things about the relationship between Belichick and Jordan Hudson that are probably great for him professionally and personally, right? But it certainly has become a bit of a shit show. So talk to me. I'm sure you've been talking about it all weekend.
Well, I need a minute to almost opine on this, right? Because, Jay, here's the thing. Bill Belichick has always been first and foremost around his football programs about control, right? The Patriots basically invented how you cover camps and practices. Jay, they used to give us a big sheet and say, here are the rules and the regulations for being at practice, right? And for those who don't know, it got so ridiculous at one point that when I was when Fourier and I were down there last, which was like 2 years ago, we had some kid out of school who was running our Twitch stream. And on his personal account, he posted video of a fight that went down in practice. I'm not kidding, Jay. 5 minutes later, we had a PR underling, some little 5'2" waddler coming up there. I'm tough and empowered. And then finger wagging this kid for illegally putting video up, right? Whereas some asshole in the stands could do it. And they have tried to shut some of those people down. But I use this as a point to say it's always been about control. And Bill has had either the people that he has put in control or the people he put in control and they empowered their little underlings. But he also had a guy beside him, Bill did, named Berge Nigerian. So every time you'd see Bill, you'd see Berge. Berge was basically the do-boy, that's about as best I could put it, for Belichick. He would be the one who would yell at media people when we would talk about in camp, Revis covering Gronk in the red area in practice. We get there the next day and you get, someone needs to see you, and you get bitched out for talking about whatever, right? Jordan is now the new Berge and the new Stacey James, the head of PR. I can't believe, Jay, that people who have been in the belly of the beast in Foxborough, or Jesus Christ, just gone down there to cover a damn day at camp and do a show. You practically get frisked. You can't fart. God forbid you mention a formation. You talk about a position. They're going nuts down there when Bill was there. And it was always these other people. Like if you effed up so bad where Bill has got to say something to you, then ultimately it's those people who bring you to the king, and then you bowed and genuflected. Jordan is just now in that role. You know why? Because Bill doesn't trust people. He can trust her. He doesn't know, Joe Merrow Jr. I use your name, Cody. He doesn't know Joe Merrow Jr., the SID at North Carolina, to be able to protect him. That guy's probably going to take care of himself. So what do? You put the lady in there, because who is going to cuss out Bill's girlfriend down there? That'd be nobody. It is perfect for Bill to maintain control. And all people are looking at and thinking about, Jay, is that she was the one who spoke up on that CBS interview. And people think of how creepy it is for a 72-year-old to be banging a 24-year-old. If she was 45 years old, this wouldn't be anywhere near the story. But because she's 24 and Bill has given her, I think, the Bears role, now everybody's like, what the hell's going on? It's been going on for 20 goddamn years up there.
Well, and let's say Belichick hadn't taken this new coaching job, right? I think those of us that follow Bill Belichick really liked seeing him on Instagram, liked seeing him in the media, right? And Jordan, I don't know anything about Jordan Hudson. I've never heard her speak, but maybe she is somewhat intelligent, right? I think she probably is if she's spending time with Bill Belichick on a regular basis, she probably has some intelligence to her, right? And to me, right, she made, what's Cody saying? I got to see what Cody's saying.
Bill doesn't know what she's posting.
Well, Maybe not, right? But ultimately, like, how old Bill? In his early 70s, right? Like, my mom's in her early 70s right now, and what she and her cousin do to each other. Let's say they're telling each other a story, and they've already told them that story. They hold up 2 fingers, like, okay, that's 2. You've told me that twice. Then they stop the story because they already told him. Belichick, I think, perhaps needs a little bit of this. And if there's a little bit of a conflict of interest because they happen to be in a relationship, so be it. But ultimately, all this, I hear UNC should fire Bill Belichick. Relax. In this NIL world, you keep him right where he is. But I think a lot of this is going to depend on what happens sort of in the football season in a long way, right? Because you can be sure Belichick's going to want to win football games, and that's going to, I think a lot of it's going to go under the rug, especially we're talking about, right? We're not even talking Patriots today, right? So here you go. We couldn't even find room for this last week. So.
Look, in a world in college football where you had a guy in Hugh Freeze who was buying hookers on company money, let's call it, right? This guy goes, he allegedly repents, he gets hired at Liberty, and now he ends up at Auburn, right? So the only reason I bring that up is because if you really want to look at some of the people in college football and some of the stuff that these head coaches have done, this is nothing. This is a nothing burger. It's really in part, Jay, because we never saw Linda Holiday in all the years that she was around Bill Belichick, right? So the other girlfriend. But no one ever talks about one of the smartest things they ever did with Linda was to keep her 2 twin girls away from the football team. Who do you think made that call? You think mom made that call, Jay? Or do you think Bill made that call? But I use that as an example of he keeps the circle close. Lombardi's down there to run the football. Jordan is there to help with what do you think Bill Belichick knows about social media? He knows how to make bad jokes about it. So maybe he didn't know that she put the whole video of them on the beach up there or something like that. But you know what? To some 17-year-old kid who's scrolling through and then they're like, oh my God, that's Bill Belichick. That's a different way to connect to kids nowadays than ever before that Bill would have no idea about. So there actually is a real reason to have this girl on staff and maybe be a part of your social media team. Bill, though, will take it to the next level. Everybody is going to think, oh, of course, it's because he's dipping the, company pen in her ink. No. It's the other way around. It's control. You notice Belichick didn't look to her and say, oh, no, honey, why don't we tell the story? He sat there and he shut up when she jumped in, just like the people who used to do it in Foxborough.
Yeah, because she nailed it. But as a Patriots fan, do you know how glad I am that I can't believe I'm saying this, that Bill Belichick is not the head coach right now, right? Right? Mike Vrabel's our head coach. I can look at this on the side and laugh and enjoy it as entertainment. My brother and I used to go at it. I was calling for Belichick I was on your show on EI way back in the day, calling for Belichick to be removed. I thought, I thought that was mismanaged. I think he was around too long. And so for me, this is a lot of fun. I don't think I'd be having much fun with this if I was like a diehard North Carolina football fan, right? Like if he was still coaching the Patriots, I wouldn't love all these distractions.
Well, I think Bill's been a horny bastard from the beginning. I mean, just be real about it. Like, remember when he came here and then the guy he was sleeping with the guy's wife, and then it ended up being in the New York Post about the whole, oh my God, look at this terrible person that he is. Like, I mean, some people, that's their proclivity. They're just horny and they're going to go out and screw and they don't want to be attached and all that kind of stuff. But I think people are like, why is Jordan walking on the football field? Well, she clearly has a role. And some of it is to kind of keep people at bay as well, because, again, who's going to snap at her? Because if you snap at her, then you're really going to get the ire of Bill because he's involved with her professionally and personally. So it's really the perfect shield in a lot of ways for Bill Belichick. And, Jay, you said something earlier that is so on point. Go win 10 games, and nobody gives a shit about any of this.
No question about it. And I will say Bill Belichick is competitive as fuck. And a lot of this stuff is what he doesn't care about any of this, right? He cares about the football stuff. So I'm interested to watch that component, right? Because that's what we all got excited about when we're talking about Chapel Bill. It's the football stuff, right? Let's transition and talk about the Boston coaches. We touched on this a little bit last week, just how lucky we are. And obviously we know the Bruins are without a head coach. Pittsburgh Penguins coach Mike Sullivan went to the New York Rangers. I think the Bruins were maybe hoping he'd come a little bit further north. But just when we talk about Alex Cora, we talk about Mike Vrabel and Joe Mazzulla, right? And even a guy like Ime Udoka, who I absolutely love, who I know is out the door. But just how lucky we are to have these three guys sort of leading these three teams right now, because it's a big part of the success in Titletown.
Look, you got to have great managers and you got to have great coaches. I don't think you have like people like Gerard Mayo don't accidentally win football games in the NFL, as we've come to know.
Yeah.
But my God, how lucky are we that we have not only people, Jay, who know their game, but they understand Boston. You know, Steve Buckley, the legendary baseball writer, once coined the phrase the Boston baseball experience, because when you become a Red Sox, it's different than anywhere else, right? But I think that applies to the Boston sports experience, in that we sniff out the phonies pretty quickly. We figure out the guys that can't play pretty quickly. We're not that surprised that often because we're astute fans. But when you think about having Alex Cora, who his team respects him, MLB respects him, the players respect him. You can say the same thing about Joe Mazzulla, and I think we'll say the same thing about Mike Vrabel. And these guys all communicate with each other. So one thing I love that Cora did was, hey, we're all kind of a little brotherhood here. Let's make sure we kind of stay in touch. They all go through some of the similar things, especially dealing with the a-holes in the media and the people on the outside.
Well, and I will say, I want to talk a little bit about Bill Belichick and Brad Stevens, right? And I think it's different, but, from Brad Stevens' standpoint, right? And Brad Stevens, an incredible person, coach, every level, everything he's done has been incredible. But I do believe his brilliance lied in knowing that he wasn't the right man to sort of coach this roster, right? I'm married to a black woman. We've talked a lot about culture and different things, right? And I do believe having a black man coaching in this league, and I'm not trying to create some big racial conversation, but I think there were certain disconnects with Brad Stevens in certain spots in terms of connecting with those guys. Similar to Bill Belichick, who I think Belichick was very underrated in terms of his ability to connect with the different persons on his team and players. I think he always could connect. But as you get older, right, I think Mike Vrabel has a very special ability to connect with the person. And so when I look at all three of those guys, like Joe Mazzulla talks all about just coaching the people and caring about people more than basketball, right? And so I think, and Alex Cora, the same thing, right? So I think with those three guys, no matter how successful Bill Belichick was, I do think he wasn't the ideal sort of players coach. And I would think what's ultimately the best about these three coaches is they're players coaches and not players coaches and, drill sergeants too. Go ahead. I
was going to say, you said it, you kind of came back around on they have the ability to connect, but they never give up their ability to coach or be hard on those guys. And I think that was the big mistake from Gerard Mayo, where it was, yippee, let's all just be a big happy family, when in reality, you can't be that way. Even within happy families, there's somebody who runs the thing or the person who will be listened to the most. And
well, exactly. And just to cut in, Gerard Mayo, one big happy family, but we're not going to play music in the hallways. Where Vrabel, it's an experience, and I'm telling you, I just think the mojo in New England, I'll tell you right now, man, I think they're going to the Final Four.
Hey, look, listen, I think you've got a Celtics team that's going to go to a championship round, if not win another one. The Red Sox are kind of sputtering right now, but there is time with the trade deadline. But at least you have a winner and somebody that's respected in Alex Cora. And then, man, you and I know that we went quick through the Patriots schedule, but there are a bunch of winnable games there. It is not out of the realm of possibilities to think that the Patriots could win 9 games. And if you're 9-8, you're at least relevant in a playoff conversation. And if there's a step forward with the kid and the team starts to come together and they come up this much short, I'll be okay with that, knowing that the next year that, the first step is the longest stride. And that's what the Patriots need to remember this year. Take the longest stride this year, get to 8 or 9 wins, and we're going to be like a puppy with 2 Peters next year, ready for this team.
So before we get out of here, I want to circle back to UFC 315.
Yes.
Right, in Montreal. So, we talked a little bit about, we get out in the beginning of the program. I blew Gresh's ears out with,
Remember the name, Belal Muhammad.
Belal Muhammad. right? That was when he beat Sean Brady in Abu Dhabi. So I just want to talk a little bit about this, right? Now, the fight card's stacked, but I just want to talk about the main event a little bit. Belal Muhammad, Jack Della Maddalena. And I brought this up, I think, on a previous show. But I ran into Mike Valley in Mexico City, Belal's head coach. And I don't know if he was doing the happiness hedge thing to me, but he couldn't say enough nice things about Jack Della Maddalena, right? Almost shaking his head like, oh, Jack Della Maddalena's good everywhere. His grappling, his striking, you know. And the mental game is what Belal talks about a lot, is Jack Della Maddalena's mental game. You know, everyone thinks the sort of generic way this fight would go. Jack Della Maddalena is a renowned striker, and Belal's going to try and get it to the ground. Belal said last night on the Anakin Forum podcast, everybody talking about Jack's striking. What about my striking? Belal talks about, and I don't know if he's serious or not, frankly, and I'm close to him, and I don't know this. If he wants to strike, he says he's just going to strike him, maybe not even try and take him down. What I said to my brother John this morning, which to me is the key in this fight, is really physical strength. I believe if that fight goes to the ground and Belal is just too much in terms of the man strength, that will dictate this fight. But if Jack Della Maddalena can match him in terms of strength, then I think perhaps it could be a good bout. You know, I think with Sean Brady, who Belal did beat, finished him in the second round. I've said over and over again, I think Sean Brady is the toughest test for Belal Muhammad in the welterweight division. And it comes down to that sort of physical strength and wrestling. I know their first fight didn't play out that way, but that'll be the real thing that I'm looking for, is if this fight goes to the ground, how strong can Jack be against Belal Muhammad?
Well,
go ahead.
And how does Belal test that? Like, does he wait around before he really starts to get into that? Like, that to me, the first round and how Belal attacks will be very fascinating to me, because to your point, Jay, if he starts to feel the strikes, does he not abandon it, but maybe wait around, or maybe even two before he starts to try to shoot and take him down a little bit if there is some early striking success? And
Jack Della Maddalena is definitely an experienced, talented grappler. You know, Craig Jones going to be in his corner. I did a watch along at UFC Fight Pass Saturday night, and Brendan McCatherine, BMAC, who was telling me about, you know, Craig Jones, Jack Della Maddalena sleeping Craig Jones in training or whatever it is. Craig Jones legit. But none of that stuff really phases Belal. And I guess what I'll say finally, and I'll let you have the last word, is that for Belal, in his chase of this, he's unbeaten in his last 11 fights. There were so many opportunities where the UFC tried not to give him this opportunity. This welterweight championship was his opportunity to fight for the belt, yet at UFC 300, they were looking at other options for Leon Edwards, everybody but Belal Muhammad. So July 27th last year, he realized a championship. Defending this, even just one time, I think changes everything in the way Belal is viewed, right? He gets through this one. He's won 12 straight, defended the welterweight title. George St. Pierre's in the building. What else do you need, right? So I think while winning the belt, and I know I'm long-winded here, but my brother talked about when Belal beat Gilbert Burns, that was the championship fight because that punched his ticket to the championship. But what happens is they all just become bigger and bigger. But I believe this one, right? And by no means is Belal done. I think he is right at the top of his prime. But you win this one, you did it, bro. You did it.
You did. It did. Now, will Belal feel that way? Because that almost feels like I've completed the mission versus this is the beginning of a new chapter.
Belal's mission is to be the greatest mixed martial artist of all time and be in conversations that he is not in today. So no, the mission wouldn't certainly be over in any way. And also, he's one of those guys, my brother says all the time, that wants to turn around every 3 months. There's rumblings, the UFC going to Chicago in August. Belal wants to get through this unscathed and defend in August. I'll tell you right now, Belal, 100% he's going to be fighting again once, if not twice more in 2025. So I'd like him to get through this test here, though. You could be sure.
No doubt about it. Get the first one checked off and then sort of go from there. I have big belief in Belal. The moment's not going to be too big for him. If anything, it's the other way around. He's been waiting for this moment his whole MMA career. Winning the title was one thing, but Jay, you make a good point. Defending it is another. So winning it, you check the box. Now you kind of now you write your name down once you become a guy who has defended it at least one time. And it will be interesting to see crowd reaction, how people. Man. Yeah, how do you?
You were right in my head. That was exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah,
literally,
where do you? How's that going to go down in that fight?
I was going to ask you, right? And obviously, in Manchester, you're in Leon Edwards' backyard, and Belal has not necessarily been this fan favorite, but I do believe he's going to get some love in Montreal. I really do. I really do. And I'll leave it at that. But you know what? I'm not sure it's going to matter either way to Belal. You know what I mean? And his focus is just supreme. When he walks to the octagon, gosh, man, I'd love a heart rate monitor on the guy because he's just wired differently. Just that he's so relaxed. And we thought, Corey Sandhagen needs to be ready to kill, pacing back and forth. Belal's the opposite. He's just chilling.
Yeah. What do you make of the Sandhagen performance the other night?
Very strong, really happy for him. I think he should sit on his hands until that title shot represents an opportunity for himself.
I agree.
I'm really happy for him. He's one of my favorite people. I've talked to him several times after losses, and never have I seen someone with that type of perspective. I've never seen someone want it as bad as he does and be able to compartmentalize the loss quite like he does. So I think he's a great, Sean O'Malley. Look, I love me some Merab, but if Sean O'Malley can find a way to get through Merab, I mean, what a gift. Sean O'Malley, Corey Sandhagen. That's one of the biggest fights I think the promotion can make. I really do.
I'm with you on that. And it's
in
good
that class, baby.
Yeah, but it's good to know that Corey Sandhagen, even after a loss, is not like James Harden, who runs out the exit stage left on yet another playoff loss. You bitch.
Bingo.
Unbelievable. All right, well, there we go. There is a abbreviated edition of Gas. We shave it a little bit because everybody's got to run in different directions today. Thank you for being a part of this edition of Gas. If you end up winning some bets, show us some love on social media, will you please? At The Real Gresh, at Boston Attic, at Cody_Marrow, at Gas Show AM. If you've taken any of our info and used it to your advantage, then God love you, and make sure you let us know. We helped you make some money. All right, brother. So you'll be in Montreal. I'm coming back from Vegas on Friday, and you're going to Montreal on Friday, right? Or you're going on Thursday?
Yeah, I'm going up Thursday. Cody and I will be in the belly of the beast. I'm really excited for Cody. Cody and I have done a podcast with Belal Muhammad since September of 2020, and Cody was not in Manchester. So he's been in the building when Belal has fought, but never when a belt was on the line. And what I will say, right, for even I tweeted about this a couple weeks ago, but even to hear Bruce Buffer, the reigning, defending, undisputed welterweight champion of the world, Belal, remember the name Muhammad, when John does the weigh-ins, the man around whom this fight card was built, Belal Muhammad. I'm just happy for my friend to get this opportunity, but his only focus is winning the fight. Let's go.
Yeah, go Belal, go win. Hopefully, Cody will level off his drinking a little bit. It won't be like in Newark. He put it in the chat. I had to use it. Everybody have a great week. We will see you back here next week for another.
Belal Muhammad. Peace.
Later.